Good morning and welcome, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see you here today for this important event. I think a significant program for the library. Conversations at NPL is a series of programs that we have dealing with issues concerning civil rights and diversity. And as time goes on, we will continue these programs and continue to explore important issues in these areas. I am proud to say, as part of the Civil Rights Room, that we also do quite a bit of education programming. We have many students through the Civil Rights Room, but one of the exciting things that has been happening over the last few months is that we are starting to see more members of the law enforcement through the Civil Rights Room, and an important expansion of our education initiatives. We've had the Metro Police Cadet Academy through the Civil Rights Room. The TBI recently toured the Civil Rights Room and attended classes regarding that space. And just recently, the chiefs of police of urban cities were in town for a meeting, and part of their day involved touring the Civil Rights Room and hearing what has gone on here in Nashville. So we think that that is a significant move forward, and you will be hearing more and more about this important piece of the Nashville Public Library. I do think it is important to note today that what we are talking about today is in regards to the Civil Rights Room and the programming that goes on with the Civil Rights Room would not be possible without some generous donors. And Bill and Robin King, through the Nashville Public Library Foundation, have been incredibly generous donors to the Civil Rights Room and this program to make sure that it happens. And Bill, where are you? Am I looking right at you? Right here. Bill, please stand. Good. It's a work of love for Bill, I know, to support this program, and it's so important. I also want to take a minute to note the commitment of Andrea Blackman and her staff. Andrea, again, it's a labor of love, and I don't think she considers it work. I think she considers it a calling in the Civil Rights Room. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Joyce S.B. Searcy, Director of Community Relations at Belmont University. Joyce is from Yazoo City, Mississippi, and was 13 years old during Freedom Summer. While Joyce knew that her grandfather was the largest black landowner in the state of Mississippi at the time of his death, owned a chain of funeral homes, and had founded the first black hospital in the state, she did not learn until her adult years the role that her family played during the Civil Rights Movement. Joyce's family members were stakeholders in and beneficiaries of Freedom Summer. One of her brothers became the first black mayor of Clarksdale and served for 20 years. Another became the first black congressman from Mississippi since Reconstruction, before becoming Secretary of Agriculture in the Clinton administration. Joyce came to Nashville to study at Fisk and Vanderbilt universities. She has taught at Fisk, TSU, and Meharry, and served as CEO of a Nashville nonprofit for 22 years. Importantly, she now serves on the Nashville Public Library and the Nashville Public Library Foundation boards. Joyce, welcome.
Most important, you got that right. I have to tell that to the folks who signed my paycheck. Okay. Thank you so much, Kent. So today's Conversations at NPL Freedom Summer Program is sponsored by, the Nashville Public Library Foundation and the King Fund. Brings together the voices of internationally known leaders, an award-winning documentary, and an engaged community. After an excerpt from the film, Our distinguished speakers will reflect on what a movement was, what a movement is, and what a movement could be. Now to the film. Like all of Stanley Nelson's films, this one, Freedom Summer, focuses on aspects of Afro-American history that may otherwise have been unknown to audiences. The Freedom Summer program reminds us that the movement that ended segregation was far more complex than most of us know. To quote the film's producer, for a whole generation, they've never seen anything about this story. For the next few minutes, we'll get a glimpse of the hot and deadly summer of 1964, when the nation's eyes were riveted on the state of Mississippi. Over 10 memorable weeks, known as Freedom Summer, more than 700 student workers joined with organizers in an historic effort to shatter the foundations of the nation's most segregated state. The summer was marked by violence, the notorious murders of 3 young civil rights workers, the burning of 35 churches, and the bombing of 70 homes and community centers. We present Freedom Summer.
On August 31st, 1962, we had 18 people to register. Everybody went into the registrar's office, took the literacy test, came out, and as we were leaving the city, the bus was stopped by the police, and the driver was arrested. Everybody on the bus was afraid. And then after a while, there was a little smooth song, you know, Paul and Silas bound in jail, had no money for to go their bail. And somebody said, that's Fannie Lou Hamer.
I went down the 31st of August to try to register. And after I had gotten back home, Mr. Marlowe told me that I would have to go down and withdraw my registration or leave, because they wasn't ready for that in Mississippi. And I said, Mr. Marlowe, I'm trying to register for myself. So I had to leave that same night.
She has this confrontation, then leaves the plantation and comes into Ruleville, and eventually becomes someone who is a SNCC field secretary.
One of the important things about recruiting Fannie Lou Hamer was her ability to move people. Fannie Lou Hamer brought a new kind of spirit into the movement, and I think it kind of rejuvenated all of us.
I've been tired a long time in the state of Mississippi, living in the county with James O. Easton, the senator, Senator Stennis that go to Washington and tell the people that the people of Mississippi, the Negroes, are getting along good and we are satisfied. But I want him to know this, both of them, you're not satisfied, and we haven't been satisfied a long time.
We've been accustomed to men standing up and challenging the movement, but here is a woman, a black woman, and her message to us was, don't give up. Freedom is not free. Keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting.
As SNCC became more active in the Delta, Mississippi Delta, where Greenwood is in the heart of Lafayette County, we started to create visibility around voter registration, and people started going to the courthouse. People tried to vote, they would push them off the land, so they had no place to live. It took away their homes. African-American people there who had small businesses, the banks called their notes.
Even though there were very few people being brought down to try and register to vote, the white power engaged in an act of reprisal directed at the entire black community. What they did was shut down the commodities program. What it was government surplus food that was sent to poor rural areas. The county officials said, well, no, we're not going to have that, which is essentially put black people and poor people in a position where they could starve during the winter. And this was an especially bad winter.
I just keep wondering how they're going to eat and what they're going to wear, because they have no money, they have no food, and they have no clothing. They have no way to buy food and clothing. We have appealed to people all over the United States to send food and clothing in.
What would happen next would eventually reshape the direction of the movement in Mississippi. Dick Gregory was then a big-time comedian, flies into Greenwood, Mississippi in his own chartered airplane, full of food to meet the need as a result of this cutoff of commodities.
Dick, how much food did you bring with you on this trip? We brought something like 14,000 pounds on this trip here. Canned food, milk, baby food, cereal, wheat, flour, sugar, potatoes.
You had the news media coming in. And soon these pictures were going out all over the world of what was happening in Greenwood, Mississippi, where several months before it had been very much of a small operation with little visibility at all.
City officials denied a winter-long cutoff of food allotments was retaliation for the Negro voting drought. But the sharecropper who tries to register to vote often faces the threat of losing his job and being put off the plantation. Bob Clark, ABC, Greenwood, Mississippi.
It shows us that it's possible to make the country pay attention to Mississippi. Gregory's action indicates to Mississippians that they didn't have to be alone.
The American people only see what's on television at night in the evening news. So where Dick Gregory created a lot of drama and the cameras were there and then it went away, we wanted to figure out how to do that for an entire summer, to invite the children of America into Mississippi so that they pay attention to what's going on in Mississippi. And from that, the Mississippi Summer Project evolved.
Now that just sets the stage, so I know you want to see the rest of it. You do. I'm telling you, it's a tearjerker. You all really do have to see it. But we're so honored and proud to have with us today Dr. C.T. Vivian and Dr. Bernard Lafayette to discuss this. In November of 2013, Dr. C.T. Vivian was honored for his vision and leadership in the fight for justice when he was awarded the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think that kind of says it all. Among his many leadership roles, he has served on the board of the Center for Democratic Renewal and the National Voting Rights Museum. He currently serves as a founding board member of Capital City Bank, a Black-owned bank in Atlanta, and also board chair of Basic Diversity Incorporated, the nation's oldest diversity consulting firm. Dr. Vivian has provided civil rights counsel to Presidents Carter, Johnson, Reagan, Clinton, and Obama, and he continues to lecture on racial justice and democracy throughout the world. Dr. Vivian, once known as a Christian journalist, is best known for his work with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as National Director of Affiliates and Strategist for every Southern Christian Leadership Conference campaign. He literally took the calls on his chin for the nation when Sheriff Jim Clark punched him on the stairs of the Selma courthouse. He's pastored here at First Community Church. Now, after leaving Dr. King's executive staff, Dr. Vivian trained ministers and developed the urban curriculum for seminars throughout the nation at the Urban Training Center in Chicago. He's been dean of the School of Divinity at Shaw University. And in 2008, Dr. Vivian founded the C.T. Vivian Leadership Institute to create a model of leadership culture to train the next generation of grassroots leaders. Dr. Bernard Lafayette has been a civil rights movement activist, minister, educator, lecturer, and is an authority on the strategy of nonviolent social change. Dr. Lafayette has co-founded the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1960, and he was a leader of the Nashville movement on the Freedom Rise in '61 and the Selma movement in 1965. He directed the Alabama Voter Registration Project, and he was appointed National Program Administrator for SCLC and was the National Coordinator of the Poor People's Campaign in 1968. An ordained minister, Dr. Lafayette earned his bachelor's from, of course, American Baptist College in Nashville here, his master's in education and his doctorate in education from Harvard University. He served on the faculties of Columbia Theological Seminary in Atlanta, Alabama State, and Montgomery, where he was dean of the graduate school, and he was principal, I didn't know this, of Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. He has numerous publications that I won't read from this biography here, but you will have to look it up. Very, very impressive. Dr. Lafayette is the immediate past president of American Baptist College. He's scholar in residence at Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Change in Atlanta, pastor emeritus of Progressive Baptist Church here in Nashville. And he is currently serving as a distinguished senior scholar in residence at Emory University in Atlanta. Please welcome them to the stage. Don't have to turn this, just speak, right? Okay, good. So we'll start a little bit by looking back, and we'll have Dr. Vivian, Dr. Lafayette respond, and you're going to have a chance to answer questions as well. Let's talk a little bit about the issues of 1964. How were they different from today? Could you tell us a little bit how the issues are different from today's issues, especially as it relates to voting rights issues and the danger of voting rights being still a problem? Who wants to start?
Well, you're doing voting rights right now, so here's a chance to...
You want to pick your microphone up?
Yes. I was really talking to him.
Dr. Lafayette, you want to pick yours up too?
Bernard is doing some voter registration right now for SCLC, so I thought maybe that's a good spot for him to start.
Okay, Dr. Lafayette. Tell us a little bit about the 1964 voting rights issues, how that's different from issues of today, and as well as things beyond voting rights.
One of the things that we find that's different is the fact that you have the number of black elected officials already in place. And like Mississippi has the largest number of black elected officials. So the irony of the situation is that when the Voters Registration or Voters Act of 1965 was put into effect, the purpose of it was to correct a problem. So an act is different from an amendment to the Constitution. This is simply an act that was put in place to correct a temporary problem, and the language simply says that you cannot discriminate against people who are of color or African Americans, or black folks. And so you couldn't put into place any kind of requirements or instruments that would deny black people from registering to vote or interfering with people who are attempting to register to vote. Like, for example, a death in Mississippi prior to this would simply be a state offense. The Act of 1965 made it a federal offense to harass somebody or to kill someone, for example, in the state of Mississippi. Okay? So, like when Medgar Evers was killed in Mississippi, for example, that was a state offense. But when you interfere with people who are trying to register to vote after that bill was passed, that becomes a federal offense, and so the federal government can get involved. So that bill, for example, that act, had to be renewed periodically. It was not a permanent thing. Like court decisions, okay, of 54. So this is not a permanent thing, it's temporary. And the assumption is made now that that problem is corrected.
Yeah, but it's not.
What some people don't know, it was not just the South, but like, for example, in the state of Illinois, any third party that was in existence, if they wanted to be on the ballot, like the Freedom Democratic Party, or Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, Chicago Freedom Democratic Party, or whatever, you had to get twice as many signatures to be on the ballot as than the other party, like the Republicans or Democrats. Because you were a third party, you had to get twice as many petitions. And like when Jesse Jackson ran for president, he had to get, okay, twice as many petitions to even be considered a candidate, all right? So the assumption then is that this is no longer necessary because the problem has been solved. And that's the irony of the whole thing. You had about 167 violations already that was documented, okay, related to black folks being denied the right to vote and all kind of systems put in place. Even with that, the court ruled that it was no longer necessary. What they were trying to do, and this is something we need to be aware of, is to keep the federal government out of state business.
States' rights.
See, that's right, states' rights. We are a nation of nations. Because when you get your driver's license, yeah, you can drive all over the United States, but you have to get your driver's license in a state. And each of the tests are different. Okay? So why you need to have a different test? You're going to be driving on the same highways. Okay? So we are a nation of nations. In fact, we're 52 nations as well, on top of the other states, because of Native Americans. Those are separate states and separate jurisdictions with different rules. So this is why you have the complication here in the U.S., is because we have such eccentricities and we have such distinguished identifications. Like, where are you from? Most people say, well, I'm from, some other country or whatever. Mexico. They don't talk about Cuernavaca. If you say, where you from? I'm from Cuernavaca. No, I'm from Mexico. All right? Where are you from? I'm from Ohio. You see? That identity. All right? So my point is, I'll stop here and simply say that it's very complex. And if you have a simple solution or a simple analysis, you are wrong.
Yeah. Very complicated. Very complicated. Dr. Vivian?
Yeah, what's necessary,
Pick up your
Oh,
microphone.
pardon me. What we really have to also state is that these southern states in particular, but in the nation abroad, are trying to make it more complex than it has to be. When they're satisfied, it's very easy to make it so that all of us are one together in the United States. When they don't want it to be, then that's where the difficulties, and we have them right now, right across the country. Mississippi is a good example right now. Is that it's difficult only because it is being made that way. The 15th Amendment was there to change most of that, right? However, they've changed now so much of what we thought we had won that it still remains difficult. And the real message is that every person, I don't care whether you're black, white, yellow, pink, or polka dot, right, must in fact get the maximum number of people to vote. That is basic understanding that the rest of us who spend full time at this sort of thing cannot be effective if the communities are not effective in bringing people and getting them registered to vote, right? Yeah. This is the basic thing that we have to know in order to complete the civil rights movement. It can't be completed without that. We've got to make certain that we have, as Bernard said, not 50-some states, but make it one state, particularly about voting, because that's the one that's most attacked because of the desire to control people at the local level. Yeah. This is really about controlling people. It is not simply about voting as we would take you, put a piece of paper in a box. This is about how you control people. As you noticed in the film, when came to the part where they only arrested one person, but then they cut off food from everyone else, right? This is about control, and we have to understand that, and that either we're going to have a democratic nation, or we really we might as well be in Hitler's Germany.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow. It's about power. It's about power. Thank you. Well, you both worked in Selma. Dr. Rod, you worked there in 1962. You know, from the film, and everybody, again, I stress you have to see this film. I mean, it's really a tearjerker. Compare your experience in Selma, both of you, your experiences, to Freedom Summer in 1964 for us.
Well, the idea is that Bernard was...
You got to speak in your mic.
Oh, that's... Okay. See, we preachers have something. We think that as soon as we open our mouths, you can hear it to the back of the auditorium. Is that we're so used to thinking that that I'm thankful that you're correcting me.
Well, preach to us, Doctor. Preach.
But when we look at where were we really?
You compare the Freedom Summer
for 42
to Selma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Selma. Bernard was in Selma before SCLC was as a full-time thing. Bernard was, well, he'll tell you about that. But the idea was that we as SCLC, was concerned about how you build up going to finally being able to get the right to vote and have it backed up by the federal government.
Okay.
We moved one step at a time. First thing was Montgomery, right? The next thing was to move to Birmingham. We got laws out of Birmingham. We got changes in the law in Montgomery in the first place. This is why Martin King became so important, all right, because we won at that point. We had not had such a victory in the South. Then finally, we could make our way into Selma with enough force and enough background to be able to change things. In the middle of Montgomery, in the middle of Birmingham, we stopped everything and went to the March on Washington, remember?
Yes.
Well, when we came back from that, we had people on our side like we never had before because of the success of, right? All of this was tremendously important as all of us were doing a particular work that made a great difference, right? In fact, the work in Mississippi was not SCLC. It was really being done by SNCC.
Okay.
And that was so terribly important because everything affects the rest of it, right?
Yes.
And no matter what we were doing, it affected the rest of us. And so what Bernard had done in Selma was, in fact, I thought, watching the film, I thought one night Bernard was going to get killed, all right, is because that's how they had planned it, right? Bernard offset that, right? And then picked up the youth of that city. Well, that got them ready for when we finally came in as the major, as the major actor, right?
Okay.
So that everything helps everything else.
Everybody
and
has
this
a
is
role.
what we have to see, right? Is that everything done by one group helps another group if we're all on the same page about freedom. Because if you want freedom, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white. If you want freedom, you can learn that it's not a black-white issue as much as it is about your full life. It's been made black and white because of the racism in the South in particular, but we had it in Illinois. What part of Illinois and where you were, right?
Walter's saying up south. This is just
up south.
Might be Illinois, but it's
right,
up south.
Right? And so if any of us want democracy, all of us have to be working for it, right? Democracy is not something that has color on it, all right? Democracy is something beyond that. If we see it as, and we're working together, black and white around it, this is one of the most important things that made the movement, all right? It wasn't ours alone. When people see something's wrong, correct it. Not because you're black, not because you're white, but because you're suffering, number one. Number two, you cannot have what you want for the nation. And number three, there is not the possibilities of the future that you would desire for the next generation.
All right. So it's moving, and everybody has to play a role in it. Dr. Lafayette, you want to pick up to talk about the Selma and compare it to Mississippi Freedom Summer?
Yes, the movement in Mississippi, Freedom Summer, was holistic. compared to the movement there in Selma. While there are a lot of similar activities in Selma as there were in Mississippi, the focus was not just simply on voter registration in Mississippi. Bob Moses was the distinct person who was assigned as the director of the Mississippi voter registration project, actually. And voting was important. But no sooner than they attempted to register to vote, people got, as you saw, thrown off their farms. So that became another issue. It had to do with survival. It had to do with hunger, and it had to do with people living. So therefore, compared to Alabama, you didn't have as much of that. And that was the reason why you had such a large number of blacks in Mississippi, comparatively speaking, okay? And in certain areas of Alabama, you also had that large number of, like we call it the black belt, okay?
Yes.
And it was really thinking about the soil, because you had the black soil and the white cotton, and then you had the black people, okay, and the white overseers, okay? So that black belt had double meanings, okay? But Alabama also had its black belt, okay? But they didn't whip anybody with the belts. They used other forms of, you know, punishing people. And so people got thrown off those farms in Mississippi. That changed the whole circumstances when you had that tenant farmers. Now, I was with Medgar Evers some nights when he had to leave his office and go and rescue some tenant farmers from their farms because they were going to be really harassed, and you always were in debt if you were a tenant farmer.
Right.
And so the landlord would not allow you to, you know, extricate, you know, your farm or whatever. And I remember one night that Medgar Evers got in an old raggedy truck and went out to the rural areas of Mississippi with an old hat on and that kind of thing, because usually he was very spiffy when he dressed and that kind of thing. But he would put on those kind of clothing, and he would go out and help a family move and leave the farm. So he served in many different capacities, even though he was executive director of the Mississippi NAACP. So you had the NAACP working, you had SNCC working, you had SCLC working in various capacities. Like you say, there's collaboration between them. Compared to, well, I might as well tell you the story. I went down to get my assignment. After the Freedom Rides, I decided what I was going to do is drop out of school, American Baptist College.
Now, this was when, Dr.
This was in actually 62.
Okay.
Yeah. The assignment, I wanted to, you know, my mother harassed me about going to school a lot, you know what I mean?
Of course.
And she told me
She's your mother.
I'd never finish school, she said. Then I'd say, well, no, I'm going back this semester. You're not going to stay in school. I said, well, yes, I am. She said, no, you're not. And she was right, you know. But I fixed her. I gave her some heavy-set degrees when I got them.
You did.
Okay, and I handed them, and I put them in her lap, and she says, thank you. So I was wondering who won. But she knew me anyway. Just tell me it can't happen, I'll make it happen, okay? So it was with Selma. So what happened is that when I went to get my assignment to go and be one of the directors of the voter registration project, James Foreman told me that they didn't have any more. After he had already...
They didn't have any more?
Assignments.
Okay, okay.
Because, see, when I went down first, they told me what they needed to do was raise money for Dion Diamond, because he was in jail with $10,000 cash bond, okay, in Louisiana, and that they wouldn't accept property bond or whatever. And so he said, what we need right now is somebody to raise some money. So I went to Detroit, and hooked up there with Broadus Butler and Congressman Conyers, and we raised $10,000. In fact, I got to tell you this little story. Diane Nash was in jail in Mississippi, and she was expecting.
Oh, my goodness.
And it came out in Jet magazine. Diane, we did everything we could, you know, and sometimes it was difficult for SNCC fellows to try to persuade the SNCC women, you know, to do what we thought, you know, should happen. And this was just another example. We said, Diane, why don't you just accept the bond and get out of jail? You know, because your baby's going to be born in jail if you don't get out of jail. Because she was arrested for sitting on the white side of the courtroom during one of the trials. And her statement was, it came out in Jet magazine, any black child born in Mississippi is born in jail.
Yes.
So we tried. We did everything we could.
But she was just a strong black woman.
But we found a way. When I went to Detroit, Diane's father was a dentist in Detroit. In fact, they called him the painless tooth doctor. He gave a lot of Novocaine. Okay, no pain. Okay. So he said, Diane, you know, we're having this mass meeting, and we're trying to raise money to get Dion Diamond out of jail in Louisiana. We got to raise $10,000. We can't get him out of jail. So could you get out of jail and come and speak at the rally so we could, because we know with you speaking, we could get the money. That's how we got her out.
Oh, wow. That's a great story. That's a great story. That's a great story.
So the final point is that I was really glad we got her back on the airplane, because about a few days later she had the baby.
Oh, my goodness.
In Albany, Georgia. So I was really sweating it out. But anyway, that's the kind of person she was. You know, didn't get out of jail for herself, that's okay, awesome. But for somebody else, that's awesome. When I went to get the assignment,
so comprehensive kind of experience that was in Mississippi. So
go ahead. There's a couple things that you really should know, because we keep talking in such a way that we know the backgrounds of it, and it's not necessarily so, right, for the group. One of the things that you have to be clear on, we had two different strategies going on at the same time. SCLC had one strategy, SNCC had another strategy. SNCC made certain at the end, and we had also sort of organized understanding of where we were going to be and where we were not going to be. But the idea came to, as Bernard said, he could say where he wanted to be. That's how he was in Selma, right? Before that, we had not decided, SCLC, when I said we, had not decided to go to Selma yet. We had it done another way. When people ask us to come, then we came, right? Is that, but that's one of the ideas. The other thing that was so important was that Mississippi summer, the voting time, was done a different way. That was the one where we all worked together. SCLC had to do this again, right?
Right.
Thank you. When we began to see that when we were trying to move things, we could move it better, all of us together, so that you not only had the two organizations, and NAACP was very important into the Mississippi summer. We also had other organizations with us in the Mississippi summer. That was the voting rights of that summer. Is that that was a very, very important kind of working together that told us and told our enemies as well that when we start working together, more gets done in a very positive way, and that there are certain issues that it wouldn't make any difference what you were doing. You needed to be working together to get it done. And that was very important. We never had to fight each other. We got together and figured out what we were going to do, how things would be divided up in the action, not necessarily on a piece of paper, but in the action it was divided up, and so we did what each one of us wanted to get done.
Yeah, that's great.
I want to give a strategy. How did Martin Luther King decide where he was going to put down his boots, so to speak? There were certain things that were always present when you look at these movements. You couldn't be everywhere all at the same time. So movements, see, every movement we talk about is named after a city, not an issue.
Okay.
Like when we say Montgomery movement, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're not talking about school desegregation. Montgomery movement is local city buses. When we say Birmingham movement, okay, it's not about the coal mines, okay? What is it about? It's about public accommodations. Selma movement, voter registration, okay? Now, the thing that had to be present, as CT was saying, is they had to be working together. First of all, you wanted to look and see whether or not there was a coalition of clergy and churches. No movement has ever been successful without that coalition on the local level. And many times it was SCLC organization, you know, the local chapter, like here in Nashville, for example, okay? The next thing you had to have is women's organizations. No movement has ever been successful without an organization of women, not one woman now, but organization of women.
Okay.
So when you think about Joanne Robinson in Montgomery, Alabama, who was a professor at Alabama State University, she had an organization. Okay? The next thing that had to be present was youth. You had to have youth involvement, okay? Whether it was in Montgomery, whether it was in Selma, Birmingham, okay, go down the list. You got to have youth involvement. If you exclude youth from being involved, then your movement was short-lived. Martin Luther King said that if you could capture the major media for 10 days in a row, you have the potential for a movement. So it's how you structure your PR. By the way, I'll give you an example. David Haberstam.
Yes.
We allowed him to come into our strategy meetings here in Nashville.
Wow.
Because we knew he would write what, okay, we needed to, communicate to the public. You can't ignore the media. If possible, you need to spend more time working with the media so the media could properly, okay, report what's going on. All right. Now, the next thing you got to have, if you're going to have successful movement, you got to have a specific goal that you want to reach. You can't say, we want freedom, we want justice for everybody, and just stomp around and holler. No. Short-lived.
Right.
Okay? The next thing you've got to be able to do is win, and that's what CT was saying earlier, after the March on Washington. What was the purpose of the March on Washington? The purpose of the March on Washington was to give an opportunity for the American public to speak to its government. That's why we went to Washington, okay? Because, and guess what? When all of those white folk showed up in Washington, D.C., because see, we thought, some people thought rather that it was just going to be some black folks come up there and they were going to have a riot and shout and holler. That didn't happen, all right? When all those people showed up, you spoke to your government. And that's the thing. No revolution has ever been won except you have the sympathy, if not the active participation of the majority.
Okay.
Those bills that were passed in Congress, a majority of black folks in Congress,
Right.
majority of white folks. It's when people of goodwill decide they were going to, what? join in and lift their voices. And that movement with Martin Luther King, okay, appealing to the masses of people is the thing that did it. All right? The other thing is, my final point on that issue, you cannot succeed in changing a revolution without dividing the army. You've got to split the army. So what happened in Selma, Alabama on that bridge? A state trooper killed Jimmy D. Jackson. That's why we were going to Montgomery, okay? The capital of Montgomery. Before we were going to the courthouses to register to vote. But once they killed Jimmy Lee Jackson, we escalated the movement to, okay, state, capital. And guess what happened? Because we didn't violate the federal injunction, we were able to get the support of the federal government. And who did they provide to protect us? They provided the National Guard. In every riot, the National Guard came in to support the state troopers. In Selma, Alabama, the National Guard came in to protect us from point made.
And I'll just pass it back and forth. We'll see. This is a new one. Into the youth aspect of the movement, because both of you have talked about how important that is. And you all will have the opportunity to see the film in its entirety at 12:30 today, and I encourage you to stay and do this, because you'll see what happened when all of the young people were recruited from all across the country to come to Mississippi to participate in the movement and how they were trained. That was just so very important that that happened in Ohio. They brought all of these young people together before they went to Mississippi so they could all become unified with SNCC. And tell us about the responsibility of leaders in recruiting young people, especially these so-called outsiders. You know, I told you I'm from Mississippi. They used to say, well, these outsiders are coming in, you know, causing all these problems. So especially when you're bringing in outsiders and they were young, coming into Freedom Summer to do things like voting rights, the freedom schools, was that a concern for you in your organizing, that you would bring in these outsiders?
Yeah, in fact, that's where a good deal of the work was done.
You have to use your...
That's where a good deal of the work was done for how do you move the nation, ultimately is what you have to decide. How do you move the nation, right? The groups that he was talking about is the way you move the nation, all right? When going into Mississippi, you know there's going to be some sort of explosion. I don't say that everybody who went there thought there would be, but they knew that they would have another level of witnessing of how bad Mississippi really was. But how bad the South was is what was really behind that. And that all of the stories that we already knew about the South was made real for the greater American public. And when that happens, then you have more than black people going to their congresspeople, right? And that's the idea. How do you move the whole nation? In fact, actually, we really have to see that our task has been from the beginning is how do you change the culture?
Yes.
All right? We're not after saving a person, all right? We're changing the culture. In fact, it's strange how it happens because suddenly people realize that the whole nation has changed, and they didn't see how it got there. If you're not working with it, seeing it move, making it move, you miss the fact that it can happen so quickly. If all of those forces can be working together, it will move quickly. The next thing we really got to do is to move the white church, all right? And it's never really been done. At the last minute, one of the denominations will, like the Anglicans, they came in rather late, but when they came
into Mississippi Freedom Summer.
Movement. They came in for that, but they came in for more than that.
Okay.
All right. See, but when they came in, powerful people came with them because they have a powerful membership. All right. And when three bishops' wives from the Anglican faith came into St. Augustine, Florida, it began to change right away. All right? Why? Is because these people had real power. You're always after that, but you're after great numbers, but you're always after the power within your great numbers, all right? And for instance, labor, a mass movement, right, has lost a good deal of that action. They have a lot of people, but they don't have a lot of powerful people now as they once did. They're getting it back because they had to realize that, right? But our working together is the most important thing that can happen. Everybody has to be educated to what's going on, and that's why the control of the press is so important. That's why which channel you watch sort of already tells us where you are.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So Dr. Lafayette, tell us more about organizing the people who were coming from all of these colleges, especially in the North, and even the black students from the northern universities coming down to Mississippi, where, you know, SNCC already, of course, had this under control. How did you merge those groups together?
Well, one little known fact, and it's not in the history books, is that SNCC had organizations all throughout the North, like Chicago, Friends of SNCC, and this group, Detroit, Friends of SNCC. So these Friends of SNCC, were already created, in different places in the North. Like, for example, we were in Chicago. We were aware that it was going to be dangerous for people to start going into Mississippi in large numbers, these young people, for the summer. And say, for example, Marion Barry and I were in Chicago with the Friends of SNCC, doing some work with them at the time, And we decided to go to the Attorney General's office, hand to hand, You may remember him in relationship to Fred Hampton. Well, we knew hand to hand. And so we went to the U.S. Attorney's office there in Chicago to protest that they should send in, federal agencies to give protection to these people going into Mississippi, because we knew Mississippi. And the reason I'm smiling is because it hasn't been written anywhere. But they closed the door, they locked the door, they pulled down the shades, they wouldn't let the media, because it was up on the maybe third floor or something like that, in the office for the Attorney General, downtown Chicago. So you know how they got us out of that office? I know it's funny.
How was that?
The mail chute.
Oh my goodness.
You're looking at a person,
has been down the mail chute.
Mail chute. And Marion Barry was the first one they pushed down there. And I was afraid that we would get stuck in between the floors, But that's how they got me out of there. Anyway, we were trying to protest because we were aware there was a dangerous situation, as CT was saying, and we wanted federal government to have a presence in Mississippi to protect those people. Now, the next point is this. as long as the local people in these Mississippi counties, we always refer to Mississippi as counties, okay? Neshoba County or whatever, you know, yeah, rather than city, you know. We may say Greenwood or something, but, you know, the county is what we're talking about. The rural areas, you know, where people live. They had the people coming in, but they felt that black people would stay in their places, okay, if left alone. So the reason why they were angry with the white people who came from the north and outsiders, so to speak, is because they felt that they are the ones who would give black folks the false impression that change could come. Because they had already convinced the black folks, okay, that nothing was going to change. So they were angrier with those white folks coming in. And if you look at Selma, Alabama, for example, more white people were killed in the Selma movement than blacks. Jimmy Lee Jackson over in Marion, Alabama, okay, black, but the rest of them, Reverend Reeve, Reverend Jonathan Daniels, Mrs. Lauzo, they were all white. So they were angrier with the white folk than they were. Because they were satisfied that that was an assumption they made. That if the white people from the north stay out of there, everything was going to remain the same. So it was dangerous. And people
like
were
you
very
said,
much aware.
It's not just outside agitators, it's the culture.
No,
basically.
absolutely.
It's the culture.
Right. And the commitment that the people made. Now, another thing people don't know is that Reverend Reeve had gone and talked to President Johnson on his way to Selma from, you know, the north with his team of ministers. That's why Johnson, in his speech, his We Shall Overcome speech, he said, and one good man has died. How do you know he was a good man? He'd met him. Days before the man was killed, he had an audience with the President of the United States asking for a voters' rights bill.
Amazing, amazing.
So you see, there are some things that you have to put together, okay, in streams.
Consciously,
right.
Outsiders.
And so my point is that certainly had an influence on Johnson to maybe act as quickly as he did, because, you know, he knew the person, and the person had asked him to take some action. And that thing happened like that. So my point is, the outside agitators, now there was an issue, so let's be very transparent about this.
Sure. Tell the truth.
Stokely Carmichael said for the white folks to get out. Now, why did he say that? Because he too, okay, felt that black folks, all right, ignored the other black folks who told them to come on, let's go register to vote. So you get out of here with that mess. I don't deal with no dirty politics, okay? I go to church and we don't do that. You know, those people are corrupt, okay, and they're sinners and they're evil, all those white politicians, so we don't get involved with that. That's their rationale and how they came to that, okay? But when the white folks came and asked the black folks to come and go register to vote, they said, well, where am I supposed to go? Let's tell it like it is.
Tell it like it is. Tell the truth.
So Stokely Carmichael felt that they were still influenced by white folk, whether they were from the north or the south. Now, whether you agree with that position or not, then, you know, now, of course, my position is different, but I'm just telling you what the situation
but they registered
was.
To vote.
All right? Because as CT and I, you know, we come from the same school of thought, that all people are equal and they have equal responsibility to make sure that everybody else is equal.
All right.
And treated that way.
That's precisely.
All right? And it's not that we don't see color. We see color. Color is beautiful. Okay? And color is different. But color does not make a difference. That's the point.
I think that's the tweet of the day. I think that's the tweet of the day. Well, let's jump forward 50 years now and to look at current, because we talk about movement as was. Let's talk about movement as is and what we want it to be, because we're faced with these tragedies now, Charleston, Ferguson, you know, Baltimore, and talk a little bit about how you see them as catalysts for change, and on what front do you think we'll see the next positive change? Microphone. Don't preach now in the microphone.
Yeah, oh, that's right, that's right. Is that I need just to hold this thing somewhere.
I know.
But
you know what? I'm going to have, where is Nisha?
No, sis, I'm joking.
You sure? Okay, all right. That's my new name. He's been calling me sis. I'm happy all morning. Go ahead.
Is that what is happening right now is that we're seeing a whole new movement arise. They haven't asked us much that came out in the print, but a good deal of it was organized by various people who were in the movement before.
Okay.
And this is something we have to see, is that there's been more separation, but it's not separation, is that matter of how do you come together. That is really going on. But when we look at various people that were very influential in the last movement, are becoming more and more involved in this movement.
Okay.
At first, they did not really want us, right?
Right.
Around, because they thought they could do it by themselves. And then they found that, and they can, basically, but they can do it a lot quicker and a lot better if we use all of the knowledge that we have gotten over the years. You know, we really forget about the fact that nonviolence didn't start with us, all right? Gandhi was here a generation or so before us in the 1920s, all right? And a good deal of black intellectuals were going to India before. They were talking because they were taking their cue from Gandhi and how it was done. Martin King first read a half a dozen books on Gandhi while he was still in seminary, right? That step ahead was very, very important for all of us. We have to see what's happening in the world. They are, and the young, like Jim Lawson, is now very, very important to the youth movement that's going on. It's going on right now. Okay. And he really did the work that has given him the chance to be a leader a thought leader for a good deal of the youth today, happened right here in Nashville.
Right.
Now, one of the things that we had in Nashville that we haven't had other places is that we had our population, black, white, together before there was a breaking out. Mainly when Jim Lawson came in town, he was organizing black youth, all right, because that's who was coming. But he wasn't saying nobody else could come. In fact, one of the influential guys was the only white guy that came to us from Vanderbilt early in the movement, right? But he was looked down on. The president of the school was having problems with it, right? And then when we started organizing not only the youth, but organizing the professors and so forth across the city, that made a tremendous difference, right? Okay. Is that we just have to watch how each movement moves slowly but it all happens, all right? So that, as Bernard was saying, it's the youth and the professors, right, is it as well, because it's you have to get both of them in. You have to get everybody in that you can, all right? And they're going to come in little by little if you work them. Mm-hmm. But they don't, in fact, many people don't even know whether they are wanted in what they call somebody else's movement, right? When we do a mass movement, it is all the people possible because they are the convincers of all the other people. And that's terribly important for us to see happen and see how it happens in a given situation.
Dr. Lafayette, you want to pick up on it? Ferguson, Charleston, the next positive change in the movement.
Yes. This has been really tremendously impactful, and that is the young people taking some kind of action and expressing themselves and showing some kind of voice and courage and that kind of thing. Some people condemn them for the violence, but it's because they were not trained in nonviolence. And that's the thing that's lacking. But you see, the nonviolence was only part of the training. It was leadership that we got here in Nashville. And we were, involved with some of the key leaders in Nashville, such as, like C.T. Vivian, all right, who was substituted my homiletics professor, all right? Can you imagine being in jail with your professor? We dropped out of school, Forrest, in the midst of our exams, okay? We were trying to get away from school and get on the freedom rides. And then what happened is we looked up, and there were our professors coming behind us, okay? and pastors and that sort of thing, all right? Cellmates. We were cellmates. Can you imagine that? Yeah, down in Mississippi. Yeah, Jackson, Mississippi, yeah. So anyway, even the title of David Halberstam's book is really indicative, all right? It was actually Reverend Kelly Miller Smith who made the statement that we sat in, at the lunch counters here in Nashville and grew up overnight. We no longer were children. And that was the title of his book, Children. The Children. And we weren't children long, okay? Because we, that experience in making life's decisions, thing that causes us to do that. Now, the strategy that we got, we had the best. Kelly Miller Smith, and we had C.T. Vivian, and we had, who's that?
I'd say Jim Lawson was the professor.
And Jim Lawson, right, exactly. Grimmett was the head of, this is Professor Grimmett, who was a pastor of church here, but also head of the state NAACP.
Okay.
Right there. And Reverend Kelly Miller Smith was head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference chapter, Nashville Christian Leadership Council here. So, yes.
Vivian Henderson.
Exactly. Vivian Henderson, actually, okay. Grady Donaldson, okay, all those people. They were very much involved. Now, here's what happened. Ferguson. And I should say quickly here that I talk every week on a conference call to 40 young adults organizations.
Awesome.
Even in, one is in Japan, okay? And when I say I talk, I don't talk. I listen until they ask me something. And that's the key to it. Now, there's a division, let's be open about it so you can be aware, that a lot of these young leaders coming up feel that older adults do not respect them. They don't give them a platform, okay, when they're having these meetings and that kind of thing, to talk, They don't regard them as leaders. So they have distanced themselves. So what I've been working on with the training is getting them involved. like we invited them to come to the Selma March, and they marched with us in Selma across the bridge in the next 5 days, okay? These same folk from Ferguson and other cities like that who were involved. We also have them come into the SCLC convention that's going to take place in New Orleans at the third weekend in July, okay, in Baton Rouge, all right? So what we have to do is reach out and involve them, give them a voice, give them a platform. So it's called respect. One of the things that made us think that we were, you know, should take responsibility for leading the freedom rides and all that kind of stuff was the respect we got from our local leaders.
Okay.
They expected us. And when you expect people to do things, then that's respect. Okay? It's not speculation now. All right? You like that, don't you?
That's what I'm saying. Expect leads to respect.
Yeah.
Somebody else tweet that out. Okay. All right.
So what's going to happen now is that
no speculation about it.
We have already started training the leaders of these youth. No, I'm sorry, youth. That's the thing, you don't call them. They don't like to be called youth.
What they want to be called?
Young adults.
Okay, young adults.
Okay, even if they're teenagers, they are young adults.
They're young.
That's what, so we have to, okay, show that respect. Now, the next thing I didn't say earlier about the different things that are composed to make a movement, which is one of the most important things, is that you've got to have music. When you hear people singing their own songs, okay, then you know that they are not only in the movement, but the movement's in them.
All right now.
When you hear, okay, in Albany, Georgia, and here
by
in
the
Nashville.
way, he is the best. You should have seen. You should have seen in jail and everywhere is that Bevel and Bernard were singing songs, making up songs, the whole thing. In fact, women would be on one floor often when they first put us in jail, and they were singing back and forth.
They could hear each other.
Wherever we were, music became important, but you had to have somebody that could sing. I was not a singer, but Bernard and Bevel were, and that encouraged other people who could sing and would sing to do it. For there was a period in the movement where that you knew the songs by the cities themselves. When that was early in the movement, before we really got all together. In fact, we were going up to what was the farm up in the
in Tennessee.
Highlander Folk School?
Highlander.
Highlander Folk School?
And that's when things really began to be shared of this nature, yeah. And it came back, and so it was for every but if you didn't have somebody that could hit the floor and sing, nobody else really sang. But Bernard and Bevel were the two that just stood out in my mind. If we were in jail, they could start up singing. If we were in a mass meeting, they could do it, wherever it was. But that's terribly important. As
the songs of a movement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Even if you can't sing, you can wait until they won't hear you.
Let's look at one other clip. I think we have time for one more, and this one may be a little contribution because I know we up in the Bible Belt, y'all. But Andrew Young talked about the gay rights movement, modeling that movement after the civil rights movement. And a lot of people say, no, it's not either, no, it's not. So what are your thoughts on that statement? And, are the lessons to be learned? What are they? How do you apply lessons to the different movement? Should we be upset about that?
Not upset, that's the sense, is that when anybody wins the right to be themselves, when anybody wins, we should all be happy.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I don't have to, we don't even have to have the same kind of action, but you will have the same kinds of movements in the long run to win. Is that if they had known what we learned years ago, there would have been a movement. Movements are not decided by with the calendar. It's decided by what we do. Listen, as soon as we won, every small group in the nation began to move. Is that why? You had the youth movement. You had the old people's movement. They called it. Remember? They called it Gray. What did they call it? The Gray Panthers.
Panthers.
I remember. See, everybody begins to move when somebody wins. Not everybody sticks their neck out, but when they see winning, then they know you are right? And this is what happened to us. Everybody knows because we won. If we had not won, we wouldn't have the same power, same voice, same understanding, all right?
Doctor?
Yes, I think that people learned from other movements, just like we learned from different movements and that kind of thing. Here's a little tidbit that sometimes we overlook. Why did the students from Nashville pick up the Freedom Rides? When they called for a cooling off period, the Attorney General, as well as CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, the one that started the thing in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, years ago.
And they said, well, okay, we tried Alabama, and the governor tricked us, twice already, and they tried to set folks on fire, and, as Rip Patton back there knows, we got, on the Freedom Rides, but we jumped up and took off. Why did we do that? Okay, number one, John Lewis was on the original ride.
Okay.
I couldn't go because I wasn't 21 yet, and you had to get parental permission, and my mama wouldn't give that.
She wanted you to get your degree.
Yeah, that's right. But you see, when CORE stepped aside for the cooling off period, then this Nashville group took over. We didn't need parental permission. Okay, so we were in charge. All right. John was in charge of the first group that went down, and I was in charge of the second group. So they knew that whatever happened to the first group, I was going to be bringing the second group. Okay, that was given. All right. What people don't realize is that there was another more important reason why we continued that ride. You know why?
Why?
Because in 1961, a person could take the Greyhound bus from Virginia and ride all the way, but they had to black folks had to sit in the back, and white folks had to sit in the front by law. White folks couldn't go running back there to that long back seat on the back of the bus. That was for black only. Okay, so we used to sleep and take naps back there on that back seat. That was ours, okay? Once the bus got to Nashville, the bus station was integrated. Did you know Nashville had the first Greyhound integrated bus station in the South?
Did not know. Amen.
Yeah, we integrated that when we integrated the lunch counters, because bus station had the lunch counters. I know, because I was beaten up over there. Yeah, so what happened is that you could get off the segregated Greyhound bus, go to an integrated facility, sit in the waiting room and sit in the bathroom, either stand, and then you went, and so everything was open. Because we had desegregated the bus station and the train station, by the way.
Right.
So all those stations were integrated in Nashville.
Awesome.
So that was one of the things that motivated us to get on the Freedom Ride, because it was about, okay, that. And guess what else happened?
What?
There were black folks in Montgomery, Alabama, who rode an integrated local bus to a segregated Greyhound bus station to get on the segregated bus. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm
What
talking
you have to look is for, to answer your question, is cracks in the system.
Okay.
Where there are inconsistencies. The next thing you need to be careful of, while the interstate travel has been desegregated, because they found ICC ruling, Interstate Commerce Commission. That's how the bus, the Freedom Rides and all that kind of stuff ended. No discrimination, interstate travel. Guess what? The laws related to intrastate, if you're going from one city to another within a state, those laws have not been affected.
That's right.
It's only interstate.
Well, we're going to move now to you and ask you questions. So this is how this is going to work, and Andre, you help me here. We're going to recognize you, and once you have been recognized, you're going to speak loudly into a microphone. You come to the stage. Where you going to come? Oh, we're just going to stand up and we'll recognize you to ask your question. And I'm going to try to repeat your question for our panelists. Yes, ma'am.
I had the opportunity to witness Dr. Lafayette and Selma in March. There was a group of young people from Ferguson who were upset about what was going on. And during President Obama's speech, they began to play drums and to chant. And there were some elders who were very outraged, and one who I thought was about to become violent with the young people. And it was this sort of clash of young and old. And to the young people I spoke to afterwards, they were very passionate. It's like, you know, this president hasn't done anything on this specific issue. The DOJ that same week, and nobody was talking about it, had just said that they weren't going to pursue charges, and so they were outraged. But young people, older people just thought it was disrespectful, but they thought of it as an act of civil disobedience almost. Okay. And Dr. Lafayette intervened. And I would like for you all to talk a little bit more about sort of how we can bridge this, because a lot of things that young people do now were similar things that elders did before but are looked down upon. And so there's this disconnect that we can't really, young people aren't learning from the movements of the past because they also don't feel like they have a voice. And elders many times feel like they have it right and aren't reaching out to you. So if you
how do we bridge the gap between leaders, elder leaders, and young adults? Is that your question?
Introduce herself, but that's Hank Sanders, senator in Alabama. That's his daughter.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Young lawyer, young juvenile defense lawyer right here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you. So how do we bridge the gap between young adults and leaders of movement?
How did you handle that?
Yeah.
That situation there?
Yeah. How did you handle that in Ferguson?
The one that she's talking about in Selma, Alabama.
I have it recorded too.
How did you handle that in Selma?
Well, they had several speakers, and this was on Saturday when President Obama, was there, okay? And they had, what had happened is I'd been working earlier between the groups in Selma and the Faith in Politics and John Lewis to make sure there was not a publicity scandal or escalation of the conflict in public, for the media. So I've been working a whole month or two before that.
You already had the relationship.
So we agreed that that was one of the conflicts that we had to work on, okay? And we finally got things settled there. But that particular day was a Saturday, and the speech, was made. And they did, youth from Ferguson did have some drums, and they started drowning out the president's speech while he was speaking. I tried to get one of my colleagues, I won't call his name because you know him too well, to come and go with me, but that wasn't successful, so I went myself, and some people followed me. But I didn't want the policemen to intervene because there would be another police confrontation, okay? So that's why I had to take the responsibility. So I went and I told the policeman to step back. And sometimes they listen to what I say because they don't know who I am. Suit and tie, but I represent, what's his name upstairs? Yeah. But anyway, so I went in and I asked the fellows, I said, who's in charge? And they were beating the drums, with sticks and stuff, making up a lot of noise. And President Obama was trying to speak. So they said, we're all in charge. So I said, well, that includes me. So I took the drum, okay? Because I wanted them, because they were saying, nobody listened to us. So I took the drum and I said, I'm here, I'm listening. So the point I'm making is that we have to stop and listen. Okay. We do. And I said, I want to listen to him first, and then I'm going to listen to you. But I can't hear the president speak, okay, if you're making all this noise. And I also need you to hear what he has to say so you'll be able to respond. But if you don't hear him, then, okay, you won't know what to say to him. All right? So it was disturbing to a lot of people with all that drum beating and everything. It was disrespectful. Then you have to ask yourself the question, why didn't they beat the drums when the governor of Alabama was speaking? Huh? That's what I'm talking about. So I say we need to hear everybody. And if you want to be heard, then you got to be respectful and hear somebody else. Thank you. So while I was engaging them and that kind of thing, the media did show up and they did some stuff, etc. Now, I didn't take the drumsticks, because if I had taken the drumsticks, they still would have been able to do the African beating, right? So you got to know what to take. You need to get to the core of the matter, the drum, okay?
This gentleman right here. The Nashville what, sir?
Homeless
Nashville
Underground.
Homeless Underground.
I just want to really apologize to you two for something that I did in 2005. I caught a voter fraud charge. And I went to little bit to try to help me so I could be part, because I would be part of the president or the governor. It's a Class D felony, but I'm in the category of murderer or rapist or someone who commits treason. And I met Dr. Michelle Alexander to have a bunch of a thing called the new Jim Crow laws. We have a lot of African Americans that are locked up, and when they come out, they might want to be able to vote again too. So I want to apologize to you two. I apologize to my friends here in Davidson County and my personal friends, but I learned from my mistakes, and I'm ready to rise above. I want my voting rights back. So
what do we do? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So what do we do then to help him and help others like him who need voting rights back?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, see him at the end of this meeting. You take care of that, okay?
All right.
All right.
Next question right here, and then we'll move over here. Ms. King. Ms. Holmes?
Hi, I'm Jean Mahomes. I'm from Mississippi, Jefferson County. So I want to, talking about laws, I want to address the RICO law that Georgia used to try the Atlanta 12 and how that was cherry-picked. Many are looking at that. If they got away with that in Georgia, they can also do that in states like Tennessee, Mississippi, especially to teachers, preachers, any organization. Would you care to address that?
So the RICO laws in Tennessee, Georgia?
State RICO prosecution.
The teachers were tried as if they were gangsters, mobs, in state court.
In Georgia, when the teachers were accused of
Cheating with the exams.
cheating on the exams,
Yeah.
they were tried under those laws.
Under
and
those
so
laws.
she
Yeah.
wants to know, but they were treated like a mob.
You remember that?
And tried all together. So what?
Definitely remember that. In fact,
Can you speak in the?
in fact, and not even that alone, but even the official law behind it, lawyers behind it, or lawyer behind it, right? In Atlanta, everybody is angry over this very, very thing, right? And how do we end it? It's really too late for that. When something like this happens, you have to get on top of it in the beginning. Nobody really got on top of it in Atlanta at the beginning because they did not think that the lawyers in charge for the state would ever do anything like take black teachers and put them in a negative position. It's really too late to do much for any of those that have been condemned. We can talk about it, but legally, that didn't change anything. And most of the teachers are without now, and without jobs even, and as well as those that are in jail, or they're not going to jail in the same way, but they're still having to report as though they were negative people. We're not clear on what to do to make all of that up yet.
Dr. Lafayette, did you want to address that at all?
I think the impact of this certainly has to do with having a larger number of people involved and concerned. And what you charge people with, this is what you're talking about. It's not so much of the fact that there might have been some disciplinary action, but to put them in the category of criminals and that sort of thing really is a travesty, of justice. And I agree with CT. It was done very swiftly, okay? And people weren't able to get on top of it fast enough and to really examine it. We certainly did not agree if that behavior, in fact, was, proven that, because this is a poor example for the children. Now, as an educator, I have to say this. We've allowed the corporate mentality to take over our educational system. There are superintendents of schools throughout the United States, no educational degrees.
Oh, my goodness.
They are managers. And the whole thing has to do with managing budgets and that sort of thing, and making cuts and that kind of business, et cetera, and not anything about developing culture and helping people grow and develop, that kind of thing. You have people who are counselors and they don't have enough counselors in many of the school systems, and what they do is just try to keep their job by moving these kids out, the ones that would not get any support, okay? I've experienced it in my family in Tampa, Florida, okay? My grandson, number one, he was put out of kindergarten twice. Kindergarten. You know why? Because he corrected the teacher. In fact, it was only a couple of years ago that he corrected the teacher, okay? And he's 11 years old now, and it plays in 5 orchestras in Tampa, Florida. 2 adult orchestras. You know what I'm talking about? Bass, cello, and he plays 5 instruments, and he is a progeny, you know, child, that kind of thing. But I had to train him how to correct teachers without getting thrown out. So after I trained him, he helped the teacher understand that there were no longer 9 planets. But he called her aside, you know what I mean, rather than in the front of the class. Well, see, he didn't know. He thought it was important for the children to also know. But, you know, he was not the teacher, you know what I mean? We are in trouble. In other words, in our educational system, we are in trouble. There are certain educational programs that have been cut out. Emory no longer has a school of education, Emory University. And guess what other school, you know, doesn't have a Department of Education?
Which one?
Tuskegee.
Oh, my goodness, okay.
We are in trouble in terms of training our teachers, okay? So we've got to get a hold of this. I'm glad you brought that to mind because I need to put that on the top list of my agenda.
Next movement.
Yeah, we really got to pay more attention to that, and I'm glad you brought it.
Thank you. We have a question right here, Ms. King.
Hello, I'm Robin King, and I just remember, I mean, I feel like I'm going to be, you know, putting a glow on this, but I couldn't believe, well, I could believe because this last 10 years has really been a killer as far in many ways all over this world. But I remember hearing C.T. give a sermon one time that said, what we need is we need a prophet. And so I felt really good when we elected this young man named Barack Obama. And after the horror of this summer and thinking that we still have wonderful heads to put together for how to move this forward, you know, and I think one is to listen to the children. But it wasn't until the eulogy in Charleston that, of course, had involved not only racism, but another good subject, guns. And that I thought, wow, we have this prophet, and he's acted alone, and he said he was going to act alone, and he had had a real good week. But I was just wondering about how you all felt about that situation. The eulogy.
Yes. She wants you to respond to the eulogy that President Obama gave Reverend Pinkston in Charleston.
I haven't been.
Pick up your mic.
If you're talking that recent for me, I can't deal with it because I've been basically out of the country. I've been on the road for the last 3-4 weeks. And so I really don't know how to respond to that. As to Obama, I can respond to that, all right? If no president has been treated as badly as Obama has been treated, right? And if that doesn't tell you who to vote for, I don't think any conversation about that part of it would make any difference. But maybe you have something to say about this, Dan. I really don't. I don't know enough to. I don't like to just.
Well, I know he preached that day. You have to go back and look at it online, because I called him Bishop Obama really after that. But Dr. Lafayette, you want to respond to that?
Briefly. Tell me which speech you mean.
The speech that President Obama gave in Charleston at the funeral of Reverend.
I don't think you could do better. And when you said that he said he was going to basically be independent of and stop trying to walk around things or to be nice about it. I think it's time for that too. And but I tell you what, is that all of these kind of actions, you have to be careful how you handle them. But I tell you what, look at this, is that we now have white action like we've never had it before in a slave state. All right? Never had it like this before, right? We all have to be moving. It was very clear when he finished, when Obama finished, is that everybody in that audience was with him. When they all finished together and the newspapers spoke of it, the whole nation understood more than they'd ever stood before. All right? And when we saw what really happened in terms of bringing down that flag, it brought down more than that flag, all right? When a woman that was a relative of General Lee could come up and basically, pardon me, of Davis, it was more action than we'd ever had before from any white legislative group, right?
And fast.
Yeah.
And fast.
Yeah. And it really, everything did happen, right? Is that we have come a long way. All of the actions that we've had have been just mounting and mounting and mounting. And now those that used to stand up and declare governors and et cetera, you don't hear that anymore, right? And the real reason is because we are winning, and because when the public, the real public, just not our friends, right? But when the real public stands up and talks back to the negative people, it's the best thing that can happen for us. And we have to keep at it and back it up every chance we can get.
There's a young lady in the back with our next
gentlemen,
question.
you spoke about enlisting the help of white churches.
Yes.
Has that process begun? How does it begin? And do you see the Pope as an ally when he comes to visit the U.S.?
In fact, I love the fact that even a Pope is now speaking out, right? And I'll tell you what, they have a whole program, and there isn't a Protestant denomination that's got all the materials they have that they're bringing out behind the Pope. All right? You haven't seen it yet, but it's out there. It was out there before. There was a Pope before that tried to bring out the materials that would really make a great difference. And he died, remember? Is that now we're going to have the Christian church basically united behind social action ideas that we all work with for the last 20, 30 years.
Exactly. That's one of our anchors, and she's in disguise today in our audience with a local NBC affiliate, Demetrius Caldemus. Did you want to have anything to say on that, Dr. Lafayette? We'll just go to the next question. Yes. Okay. One more question. This gentleman down here has had his hand up for a while.
Yes, he has.
And Stokely Carmichael in around 66 was influenced by black nationalism and Malcolm X. And it seemed like when King went north, that the young people, the young black males, did not want to hear what Martin Luther King was talking about, particularly in Chicago and in Harlem. And that situation doesn't seem to have changed today. Black males seem like, the urban black male seems alienated from a lot of these conversations that we're having. And so my question is, how do we mobilize this at-risk population that is disproportionately incarcerated, that is impoverished, the hip-hop generation, churches, it seems like the churches don't know what to do in many cases. Certainly the government doesn't know what to do. Moynihan tried it back in the 60s and 70s, tried to address the African-American family and generally failed. So I wanted to know, could you speak to this alienated population, the urban black male, and how do you have any strategies or ideas for how we can reach and mobilize this group that doesn't have power and doesn't have a collective consciousness? So how do you mobilize a group that doesn't have a collective consciousness?
Thank you. How do we reach black males, Dr. Lafayette?
Okay. I brought together three gangs in Chicago, right? The Stones and the Lords and the Disciples, right? But the real reason is because it took us about 5 or 6 months to really get them to begin to understand the need for them to move in order to get the respect they needed. We stopped calling them gangs. They became more than and more important than gangs. They began to really be the people that could make the real difference. They weren't gangs anymore, and they weren't just citizens, right? They became more than that. And they began to organize in such ways that gave them respect. In fact, when they were being used by the Red Rooster owners, right? When they were being used by them by giving them little petty jobs, we then talked to, I'm trying to think of the overall guy that was the head of 1,000 young black guys, right? When he spoke to 1,000 young black guys was behind him, right? Is that he then, when we went to him and started talking, then he pulled it back and wouldn't let his people be used in that manner. That got out the other two major gangs, right? They began to control the South Side. When we ended, we had 20,000 jobs for young black guys, not just for the summer, all right? I mean, 20,000 black union jobs, right? In fact, there were union guys that didn't there were black adults that didn't have union jobs. They had jobs in the mud trades of the buildings trades unions, right? We changed all of that, ended up with the mayor, as difficult as it was to get him to go. Mayor Daley is known. I'm talking almost directly to you because I know you exactly know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. And when that happened, and we had all those guys solidly behind us, even some of the unions were trying to stop us. In fact, the unions got together. The wife and I went down to report to a government official. They came through downtown, got guys off the job, told them to go over to the particular office to stop us from giving a report to the feds. But we even countered that. Those same young guys were trying to fight with all the guys from the union that was filling the whole parking lot for the Capitol buildings, right? Is that you can do it if you give pride, and let people know you respect them, and the guys needed to be respected, right? I have a painting of the guy, one of the top guys. I still have in my house, right? But and they'd already asked to come over to see me when I first came to town, right? Now the point being is, I didn't know who they were, and in fact, about a month later, but I told them to come on over, and they came over, and we talked for a couple hours, and so later I met one of the guys that had brought them over, and I said, "How are you guys? Who is you know?" And I wanted one particular guy that was asking me questions, and here's how well they were organized. This fellow said, he was asking you questions, and I said, yeah. Oh, he said, oh, that guy says he was being told what to ask. Oh. And we were all sitting in the same room together, and I had no idea that he was being told what they did. But the gang was on the ball, and when you move that kind of strength and give it the respect it needs, and give it the jobs it needs, if that's what they desire and need, right?
Respect and jobs.
That's exactly right. Then they became men too. Right. They weren't gang members.
So right? Respect and jobs.
It makes all the difference.
Thank you so much.
But you have to organize.
And won't you give Dr. Vivian and Dr. Lafayette a big round of applause? And give yourselves a big round of applause, too. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your attendance here today, because without you in the audience, this would not have happened either.